Hey guys, welcome back to Based MMA. In this video, I'm going to be giving my prediction and breakdown for Sergei Pavlovich versus Tom Aspinall that takes place at UFC 295 in Madison Square Garden, guys. John Jones versus Stipe Miocic was the main event for this card, but John Jones suffered a pec injury while training, so Aspinall has stepped in on 2 weeks notice to fight Sergei Pavlovich at UFC 295, and the UFC decided to make that fight an interim title fight, which if you're a hardcore MMA fan, if you've been following the sport for any time now, you know that this is truly the heavyweight, this is truly for the undisputed heavyweight title, you know what I'm saying? And this is a fight that a lot of hardcore MMA fans have been wanting. This is a dream fight that I have for 2024 because I figured that John Jones and Stipe were going to fight in November and both these guys were going to retire. So I knew that Pavlovich versus Aspinall was most likely going to be for the undisputed vacant title next year. And both these guys, man, are rising contenders with an elite skill set in very different ways. And like I said, many of us just think that these two guys are the future of the heavyweight division. And even though they might not have the recognition or star power of a Jones or Stipe, in terms of getting a more competitive matchup, this fight is a lot better, man, because Stipe Miocic is old. He's coming off a brutal KO loss against Francis Ngannou. He's 2-2 in his last 4. So I think this fight is just a lot more competitive. We got two young, rising contenders who, in my opinion, truly haven't lost. Like, I know Tom Aspinall has that Curtis Blades loss, but that was kind of a freak injury. We really didn't get to see too much of a fight there. So, and then Sergei Pavlovich, his only losses in his UFC debut against Alistair Overeem. So we really haven't seen either of these guys truly lose, in my opinion. I mean, besides Sergei Pavlovich, right, who made his UFC debut in 2018. But ever since then, Pavlovich has been on a crazy tear, on a 6-fight winning streak, KOing everyone in the first round. Crazy power, crazy boxing. And when it comes to this fight, I mean, this is probably the most 50-50 fight we've seen in the UFC in a bit, in my opinion. I mean, I've heard varying opinions on this fight, from Pavlovich knocks out Aspinall easily in 1, to Aspinall is too well-rounded for Pavlovich and will easily take him to the ground and either ground and pound or submit him. So without further ado, guys, let's break down my prediction for this fight, man. I mean, Sergei Pavlovich, he's an elite kickboxer, man. The guy's built like a refrigerator from Russia. He stands in at 6 foot, 3 inches tall. He has a crazy 84-inch reach, man. Like I said, he's currently on a 6-fight win streak. Has an MMA record of 18 wins, 1 loss. His 1 loss was in his UFC debut where he faced Alistair Overeem back in 2018 and got finished with ground and pound. Pavlovich seemed like a fish out of water when it came to grappling in that fight, but Alistair Overeem was able to win in the clinch, was able to trip Pavlovich and end up on side control, landing a lot of ground and pound shots, which he ended up finishing Pavlovich. And rewatching this fight, guys, I realized that Alistair Overeem did an excellent job of not entertaining the striking with Pavlovich too much, you know? So ever since then, guys, Pavlovich has gone on a tear and finished highly ranked heavyweights such as Curtis Blades, Taito Ivasa, Derek Lewis, and we have not been able to see how much Pavlovich has really improved in his grappling because he keeps knocking out all his opponents in the very first round. Pavlovich also has an insane amount of power and speed and great boxing skill and technique, you know what I'm saying? He's not just a brawler, you know what I'm saying? He throws really nice right hooks, really nice right straights, has a really solid jab. I mean, can you imagine with his reach getting jabbed by Pavlovich? So he's really good with his jab. And his latest fight was against Curtis Blades. And I remember many fans were picking Curtis Blades because Curtis Blades is more well-rounded because of his grappling. Sergei Pavlovich is the definition of a heavyweight in the UFC. He's incredibly dangerous in the pocket, and in most cases, he finishes his opponents with a flurry of punches. Pavlovich does not really use any other skill set because he doesn't need to. His boxing is that good. He has so much power. Defensively, he has a high guard. He likes to parry punches. He uses his reach to counter with his boxing combinations. He's very plotty. Has a heavy boxing stance, so when it comes to his footwork, his stance makes him susceptible to leg kicks, but we really haven't seen any other heavyweight capitalize and really exploit this against Pavlovich. So, you know, that's pretty much Pavlovich in a nutshell. Built like a refrigerator, crazy boxing, crazy power, crazy reach, very fast hands. You know, his only loss really was due to his grappling, but that was back in 2018. He might have made crazy improvements since then, but we truly don't know because his fights don't go that long. And no one has really ever been successful at taking down Pavlovich since that first fight he had in the UFC. So that's pretty much Pavlovich in a nutshell, like I said. Now let's move on to Tom Aspinall. Tom Aspinall, in my opinion, he's the chosen one in the heavyweight division. I mean, I feel this guy is a special talent. He's 6 foot, 5 inches tall, a very well-rounded fighter that can strike, that can grapple. He also has incredible boxing with lightning speed hands. He does not stay in the pocket too much, even though he does in some fights I've noticed, like Arlovsky in his fight with Curtis Blades, which is pretty short. He does kind of stay in the pocket way too much and he does get clipped by them. But he does have incredible footwork, very dangerous on the clinch, throws really good knees in the clinch, really nasty elbow. I mean, he did knock out Sergei Spivak with an elbow. Target at all, has a really fast jab as well, really nasty right hand. And he likes to throw those kind of short shots. He was able to submit Volkov with an armbar in the first round of their fight. This man can do it all, man. And out of the two fighters, he's definitely the more well-rounded fighter. He's also a heavyweight fighter that's been finishing his opponents either in the first or second round, either by submission or by knockout. His latest win is against Marcin Tybura, which I wasn't too happy about because I thought Marcin Tybura is not really that good. He's a mid-heavyweight fighter. But I understand that Aspinall was also coming off an injury. He didn't fight for over a year, I believe. So he kind of needed a layup fight, you know what I'm saying? So we really haven't seen Tom Aspinall fight he was supposed to fight Blades. That fight ended because of the freak injury. That was going to be a very good fight in my opinion. That was going to be a 50-50 fight. I was very curious to see how Tom Aspinall would do against Curtis Blades, but we really didn't get to see too much of that fight. And I do think Aspinall has a weakness defensively. I mean, he did get tagged quite a bit by Andrei Arlovsky as he decided to stay in the pocket a little bit too long. Aspinall has not really fought any of the highly ranked heavyweights besides Volkov, which I think is arguably his best win. So we really haven't seen him fight Tai Tuivasa, Derek Lewis, Cyril Gane. But I don't think that really matters because I really do believe he would probably beat those guys. And ultimately, guys, I'm going to cut down to my prediction. Guys. I think this fight, there's a lot we can say about this fight. I think this fight is really a 50-50. And in my opinion, guys, I think this fight really comes down to who gets frustrated first. If Aspinall decides to fight in the pocket like he likes to do at times with Pavlovich and decides to push the pace like he did against Blades right at the beginning of that fight, I think it could turn into a pretty bad night for Aspinall. And in my opinion, the approach for Tom Aspinall coming into this fight is going to be patient, fight from range. Leg kicks will be key for Aspinall because Pavlovich has a very boxing heavy stance. I think that's going to open opportunities for Aspinall to really chop down those leg kicks, move around the cage. Don't let Pavlovich, have you against the cage. But I mean, that also works in two ways, right? Because I think if Aspinall is able to pressure Pavlovich into the cage, that could also help him with clinch, knees, maybe able to do a level change and take down Pavlovich. So it's going to be very interesting in this fight to see who is the one pressuring, who's the one on the front foot. And I think even Pavlovich, even if he's not on the front foot, he has pretty nasty combos. And we've seen how sometimes fighters land on him and he's able to counter with really well boxing combinations that really hurt his opponents. So Aspinall is going to need to use all his tools to really wear out Pavlovich, especially in that first round. But we haven't really seen how Sergei does in those later rounds. So I think if Aspinall is able to frustrate Sergei by just letting him at range, landing those quick shots, moving in and out of range, I think this fight could be relatively easy for Aspinall. But ultimately, guys, I do think Pavlovich clearly has the advantage when it comes to power and pure boxing. But that's not to say that I don't think Aspinall is capable of hurting Sergei on the feet. I think he's very capable, but I think his chances diminish if he takes that approach. And ultimately, Aspinall is not your typical plotty heavyweight that Pavlovich is used to knocking out. Aspinall is really loose with his movement and he will move in and out of range, which I think may frustrate Pavlovich. But on the other hand, I think Aspinall needs to be very careful not to run into a Pavlovich jab, which we have seen be very effective. And ultimately, guys, what I'm trying to say here is that this fight is a flip a coin. Flip a coin. That's who's gonna end up winning. I do believe this is both these guys are each other's most difficult fight to date. And even though Aspinall has more tools to win this fight, I also believe he has less room for mistakes. Like many said this about Blades. Like many said that Blades was more well-rounded than Pavlovich. He should be able to win that fight. However, we've seen how Blades has a history of not grappling when he should, and he gets sloppy. But right now, guys, my heart says Sergey wins this fight, but my mind says Aspinall. And ultimately, I am going with Sergei Pavlovich slightly. When I envision this fight, I see a moment where Aspinall throws a kick, and as he moves out of range, Pavlovich catches him with a right hand and puts Aspinall down. Like when I've been thinking about this fight, and I've been thinking this fight for a very, very long time, I just see maybe Aspinall getting too carried away, staying in the pocket way too long, and Pavlovich catching him. And I think Pavlovich probably has improved his grappling. It's just that we haven't been able to see it because he's knocking out everybody in the very first round. And it is the heavyweight division. So I even think Pavlovich's physicality and the fact that he's built like a refrigerator might make it a little bit difficult for Aspinall to just shoot for a takedown or be able to land a trip. So ultimately, guys, and also another factor to consider, which I don't think a lot of people are going to bring up. This is a short notice fight for Tom Aspinall, guys. He is fighting on 2 weeks notice. He's absolutely coming off the couch. And Pavlovich, he was a backup fighter for John Jones versus Stipe. So he was training, you know what I'm saying? He was training. He was getting ready for UFC 295. Whereas in Aspinall, he's coming off the couch to make a quick turnaround to save this card. So I think even that's an advantage to Sergei Pavlovich, you know what I'm saying? So ultimately, I do think Pavlovich is going to win this fight, but I do think Aspinall is absolutely the more well-rounded fighter, and he absolutely has more ways to win this fight. But I just think Pavlovich right now, he has insane amount of power. He has crazy boxing, and we've seen how Aspinall, sometimes when he enters exchanges, he does leave his chin up in the air. And I just see a moment where Sergei Pavlovich is able to put him down and finish him with ground and pound shots. And ultimately, that's going to be my prediction, guys. I think this is a fantastic fight. I absolutely cannot wait. I feel like the main event and the co-main event of UFC 295 are probably the best fights we have left this year. It might not be the best card because I still think UFC 296 is probably more stacked when it comes to like the actual card. But I think these two fights at UFC 295 are just more exciting for me. They're truly 50-50 fights, man. The main event as well. This fight as well. I've been going back and forth, man, because at first I picked Sergei Pavlovich, and then I was starting to get convinced that, Tom Aspinall has the skills, man. He's not your typical heavyweight, but the fact that it's on short notice, the fact that we've seen Sergei Pavlovich just absolutely destroy everyone. And, Tom Aspinall did suffer from a pretty bad ACL injury against Curtis Blades. And I didn't like how he started that fight. He had this very, like I said, he pretty much rushed against Curtis Blades, and he was starting to get tagged, even though that fight only lasted 15 seconds. That's something that I took away. And ultimately, guys, I just think Sergei Pavlovich's power is just going to do the trick. And I think Tom Aspinall, if he really wants to get the fight to the ground, he's going to have to take more risk. And I don't know if he can take the shots from Sergei Pavlovich, you know what I'm saying? So ultimately, I'm going to go with Sergei Pavlovich to win this fight by a first round KO, guys. Let me know down in the comments below who you think is going to win this fight. This bumps me out, man, because I love both these fighters. I think Aspinall probably has the best chance of beating someone like John Jones. And I think if he wins, it is more likely that John Jones would return to fight a Tom Aspinall rather than a Sergei Pavlovich, in my opinion. I think a Tom Aspinall versus John Jones fight sells more than the Sergei Pavlovich fight. But this truly is a 50-50 fight, in my opinion. It's truly a 50-50 fight. I just think that Sergei Pavlovich's reach and his boxing technique is going to give Tom Aspinall problems. And even though Sergei Pavlovich doesn't have the best leg kicking defense, he does move out of the way from leg kicks. And if Tom Aspinall, he kicks and he doesn't move out of range, Sergei Pavlovich could catch him as he throws a leg kick. So I do see that scenario happening. So ultimately, I'm going with Sergei Pavlovich to win this fight by first round TKO. But you know, I might change my mind, you know what I'm saying? Because Tom Aspinall is very good, man. He's super skilled, one of the most skilled heavyweights we've ever had. And I think this guy has a lot of potential. I just don't like that this fight is on 2 weeks notice. Last time I picked Volk on 10 days notice, it didn't turn out too good for me. But this is a very different fight. This is the heavyweight division. But ultimately, guys, I am going with Sergei Pavlovich to win this fight by first round TKO. So let me know down below who you think is going to win this fight. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.